My adventure with Superman has become a beacon of hope for both Superman fans and people desperate for a fun, lighthearted, but still maturely written superhero story that doesn't need to go full Injustice levels of edgy. It's been one of DC and Warner Brothers' best animated properties in a long time, and has become one of my favorite shows in recent history. The hopeful and inspiring themes, the adorable and deep character writing, the sleek anime-esque art style and fight scenes, and above all, one of the best shows to properly capture the core elements of what makes us love Superman as a concept since the classic DCAU version of the Big Blue Boy Scout. However, in spite of those high praises and the absolute feast we've had with Tomboy Lois and Kara fan arts, the show is not without its criticisms, with its most damning issues concerning the villains of the show feeling a bit uninspired, which, for a superhero show, is kind of a cardinal sin. Hey team, phantomskullvt, the super security Vtuber here, and I'm here to discuss the overall writing and design issues with my adventures with Superman's villains, alongside ranking them from worst to best. Gee, I wonder who could possibly be taking the crown here after 2 seasons of mediocre villain writing. Nah, I'm just kidding. Intergang sweep! Spoiler alert for seasons 1 and 2, alongside info gleaned from the DC panel at the 2024 San Diego Comic-Con concerning season 3. You've been warned. I touched on it briefly in my Luthor video, but Adventures has a lot of issues with how the show writes and designs its villains. Though granted, Superman has always come in second to Batman when it comes to an iconic rogues gallery. While Superman definitely has notable villains, few really leapt into the pop cultural zeitgeist as many as Batman's have. While Adventures does a mostly good job at modernizing and reviving a lot of Superman's rogues that are often overshadowed by the Big Five, they all in general find themselves lacking. A lot of this can be laid down to character design. A vast majority of the foes all have the same sleek, lab-white Kryptonian tech style, and it is just so boring. These are super villains. Look at the science fiction circus that is Spider-Man's villains. Good villains have style. Season 2 improved on some areas with the villain concepts, but also took a few steps back as well. So today we'll be ranking all current villains from the current 2 seasons of the show to see who comes out on top in this mediocre villainy race. First off, we've got an honorable mention. Hank Henshaw. Yeah, I know technically he's not a villain. Yet. But to be honest, his characterization in season 2 ended up being great setup for him. He starts off as a somewhat decent guy and is revealed to be a repulsively hateful bigot to the point he almost derails a game show meant to help children's charities to unload a xenophobic rant on live TV because he was upset Superman was part of the show. He then storms off basically insulting the audience's intelligence for not being on his side about Superman being a threat again on live TV for a game show designed to help children's charities.
You may have the masses fooled, but those who matter are keeping their eye on you. Earth is for Earthlings, Superman.
What an asshole!
Regardless of if his post-Brainiac invasion identity ends up being either comics-accurate cyborg Superman or a proper incarnation of Metallo, much like season 1 with Alex, this was a great setup for his debut in season 3. Now on to the worst of the worst.
And this is my shot. Which do you think is higher priority?
I'll be honest, this guy was so forgettable I needed to research if he was even an actual comics character, and surprisingly, he does exist as a Steel-centered villain, which, you know, appropriate for an episode introducing Steel. But beyond that fun trivia, there's not much to Weston. He's just a stock evil corpo CEO character. He's loud, greedy, abusive to his staff who do all the real work, and willing to dick over anyone and everyone to the point of almost destroying the city to make a profit and increase his own ego. So, just like real-life corpo CEOs. He does what the story needs him to do, but I highly doubt we'll be seeing Weston outside of his introductory episode, especially since we have the Mac Daddy of heartless comic book corpo villains coming next season.
The OMACs, yeah, from Task Force X, the original kill squad.
I debated heavily about including these guys since they're on the same level of character as the Task Force X soldiers as far as henchmen, but they do deserve a spot mostly to complain about wasting the pedigree behind their names. I'm less annoyed at them using OMAC as a reference for Task Force X's drones, since I don't have much feelings for OMAC as a character, since he can be best summed up as DC's Skynet at best. However, Metallo being reduced to what are honestly reskinned OMAC drones was a massive letdown in Season 2. Metallo, alongside Livewire, are one of the few notable Superman rogues that aren't one of the big five, and this was just a waste. Others hope we may see a proper version of Metallo next season. These wannabe Gundams are staying at the bottom where they belong.
But I'm not going down easy.
Like Weston, I need to do research on Heatwave as I was rather unfamiliar with them, and they turned out to have one of the most drastic redesigns out of all the villains. In the comics, they're a guy for starters, being more known as a Flash villain and quite literally just a reskinned asset flip of the more well-known Captain Cold. It's equally puzzling since Superman has a fire-themed villain from the old series in the form of Okana they could have used. While I do appreciate the overall Butch Muscle Mommy redesign, there really isn't much to say about Adventure's Heatwave. She suffers from the overall issue of having a boring, drab Kryptonian tech design that a lot of the Season 1 villains suffer from. I mean, you have a fire-themed villain, but not a single flame decal on this entire suit? Come on now. Even ignoring the design issues, there's just not a lot to her character since she's not been a major presence. In her debut episode, she gets heavily overshadowed by Deathstroke's proper debut, and is mostly in the background of Oslin's 11. We glean some decent bits of character out of her, such as her care for her crewmates and her relationship with Livewire, which I'll focus on more when we get to her, but there's not much to her beyond it. Hopefully come Season 3, her and Livewire will have more episodes to better flesh out their characters, and hopefully Homegirl takes that boring ass suit to the paint shop in between seasons.
I need backup. Nemesis Omega has landed.
Nemesis Omega is a complex one to talk about as there isn't a lot of concrete evidence to go off of. The mystery and dread behind them and how they shape General Lane and Waller's current motivations, alongside everything involving Task Force X, is what makes them interesting. There's legitimate weight to their name when brought up, which makes the possibility that it was just an unmanned drone on autopilot, as AI Jor-El suggests, such a massive waste. There's so much to think on. Were they a drone? Were they just a random Kryptonian warrior that was just there to showcase how dangerous the Kryptonians were compared to modern Earth's defenses? Are they long-form foreshadowing for you-know-who? Unfortunately, with Brainiac's defeat and Task Force X's disillusion post-Season 2, we may not ever know if this figure will ever be making anyone kneel or not. But time will tell, and what little presence they had was more than what could be said for any of the previous villains.
We say... Fine. Intergang forever.
Putting 3 in one slot seems cheating, but they don't really offer much individually, so they come as a package deal. Intergang, which is made up of Silver Banshee, Mist, and Roughhouse, and let's be honest, you only ever heard of Silver Banshee probably, suffer from the same design issues as Heatwave, being just punks in the same drab Kryptonian tech armor with little design flair. Banshee gets some points for her helmet and overcoat, that she loses after her first episode, but that's about it. What really marks these dorks higher is they at least have personality. They weren't much of a threat unless backing up other villains, but they were fun, somewhat incompetent crooks to follow. Granted, they are a far cry from the massive super tech criminal empire most versions of Intergang end up being, but again, they are rather funny and cute as they stumble their way around villainy. These morons aren't the biggest threat, even to the point the Kryptonian ice machine malfunctioning was a bigger threat than they were, but they made for fun early villains, and much like Heatwave, I hope to see more of them as comic relief, friendly enemy villains in Season 3. If I put them individually, they'd probably have ranked even lower, but their goofy dynamic together bumps them a bit towards the mid-tier. Intergang on top.
I'm designed to beat you. I'm designed to annihilate you.
Like Intergang, Damage and Atomic Skull share a slot as they're basically the same character but with different designs. The only reason they honestly eke out higher than them is because they buck the trend of uninteresting character design and have actual presence as threatening villains. However, despite having interesting character designs and instigating some fun fight scenes with the heroes, they don't have much going on for them in the personality department. They're both simply Task Force X goons for Waller to sick on the heroes and to be Deathstroke's backup dancers. We see very little personality out of them beyond, "I wanna take you down, Superman." and just being evil government black op thugs. They do their job as goons for the heroes to fight, and they do it well. But that's not enough to propel them to the top 10. Speaking of...
Because we want the same thing. To take down Superman.
Ah, Mr. Father of the Year himself. The General was a mysterious figure for most of Season 1. He presented a daunting threat to the fledgling Man of Steel, being not simply a thug with a power suit, but a literal arm of the US military who was obsessively hunting him down. General Lane more than earned the fearful reputation Clark has for him for most of the series, even after being downgraded to a jerk of an anti-hero in Season 2. He still grabs your attention. Everything that drives his early villainy, his trauma from surviving Zero Day, his estranged relationship with Lois, his downward spiral into a Knight Templar before realizing what his task force had become under his nose, all make for a compelling villain. However, I do feel like he gets off a little too easy when he switches sides if you think about the fact he still ordered an entire purge of the Cadmus labs, murdering hundreds of the greatest minds of their time for what could have been a simple office visit to say, hey, that's Uncle Sam's dime you're spending on your hippie tech, so make me some alien-killing railguns before I kick you all back to the tech startup garages I found you in. I don't know, maybe Waller had a hand in this. Maybe they got paranoid of Cadmus's gay gorilla agenda or something. Who knows? Regardless of that mildly inconsistent note between purging an entire enclave of scientists for not following the assignment to, how could you use innocent civilians, Amanda? The General is still a compelling character to follow. Sucks it looks like a lot of his character development happened off screen when he ran away, but he still left a decent mark on me as an antagonist turned anti-hero. Still gets an F in parenting.
I do what I must. Then I thank them for their service to the United States of America.
Man, Warner Brothers really loves The Wall. Waller's a hard one to discuss, as I feel like criticism of her is more of people getting sick of seeing her in every new DC property, as if there was a mass layoff of all the DC Universe's other shady US government Black Ops directors over Adventure's specific take on the character. In all respects, Waller is a solid, if kinda boring villain. She does what she needs to do as a spooky shadow government director, being far more ruthless and sociopathic than General Lane, really showing off the evils of an unchecked government agency that thinks it knows better than the people it's supposedly designed to protect. And her eventual fall from grace was very satisfying when her jackboot thuggery finally catches up to her by the end of Season 2. However, as I mentioned how prolific the character has become in DC media, the problem arises that if you've seen one version of Waller, you've seen them all, and this one isn't claiming the DCAU version's bad crown anytime soon. There's some interesting dynamics such as her friendship with General Lane, her resentment of him being in charge, and the Season 2 finale showing that at the very least her defender of humanity no matter the cost bit wasn't an act like Lex's was, but none of it is really given the time to develop her past the stock Waller character traits. With Task Force X dissolved and her on the run as of Season 2, I have a feeling she'll be taking a back seat as a major villain next season, but I doubt we've seen the last of the Wall. All in all, like most of Task Force X's characters, she does her needed job in the narrative, but doesn't soar to the same heights as other versions of the Spy Master.
Welcome to the flagship of the Interdimensional Peacekeeping Force, the League of Lois Lanes.
I don't think we really need to argue if the League of Lois Lanes belongs on this list or not, right? I mean, even TV Tropes considers them antagonists, so hey, I'm counting them. The League were an interesting group even though they were vastly overshadowed by the real villain of the episode, but we'll get to him in a bit. Regardless, they were a unique twist to the multiverse trend, not being alternate variants of Superman, but of Lois and a Jimmy being interdimensional peacekeepers, and the shout out to Golden Age Lois was really fun. That being said, they do end up with a decent little twist of being antagonistic towards Clark as much as they are to this little blue dick, alongside feeding Lois's insecurity issues when she compares herself to the multiple, very successful versions of herself. It is a rather dark take on Lois, with the implication that this team are specifically from dimensions where Superman is more of a homelander than his usual self, and it shows with their specifically kryptonite weapons and their utter disdain and indifference for any version of Superman, which seems wildly out of character for the Lanes. There's even an implication this group are a rogue splinter faction, since I highly doubt any League of Lois Lanes made up of both the Golden Age or DCAU version would sign off on anti-Superman weapons or be as trigger-happy as this crew is. It's unknown if these specific lanes will ever show up again, but if they do, it will be interesting to see if they're considered the violent fringe crackpots of the Laneverse. Regardless, with just one episode, they've really solidified themselves as notable antagonists compared to most on this list, but not quite top 5 material.
I'm gonna need to see more zeros.
Oh boy, Livewire was a hard one to place. If this was only season 1, she'd probably rank lower, but even then, I'm debating if she should be this mid-tier. But her competition really isn't setting the bar that high to begin with. Let me just get this out of the way. From the start, I hated her redesign. I'm cool with the darker skin, I'm indifferent to the lesbian haircut, as some have called this hairstyle, but what I can't forgive is just how boring her villain costume is. And it's not just because it's less sexy than other versions of Livewire, it's the same problem as Heatwave or Intergang, and most of the villains. It's just so sleek, uniform, and drab. She looks more like a henchman than a main villain. Admittedly, the design has grown on me, alongside her role as the mercenary supervillain of the show, but I really hope she gets a more unique look during season 3. Her personality change was also a bit of contention. Most versions of Livewire are usually a mix of unstable or devil-may-care troublemaker. The decision to make her a no-nonsense mercenary felt very boring to me during season 1, but with season 2, I've accepted her more down-to-earth villain for higher personality, to where I feel she serves the role well. While I'm hesitant to say that her being revealed to be a certified girl kisser and in a relationship with Heatwave made her more interesting, it's a bit more complicated than how some people have put it. Orslan's 11 showed a lot more of Livewire as a character, both in her relationship with Heatwave, her ability as a professional criminal, and showing despite her ruthlessness, she still has some level of ethics and moral scruples, choosing to come back and rescue Lois and Jimmy to ensure they can go rescue Clark, and even giving helpful relationship advice to Lois to get her out of her funk and to finally sort out her insecurities about being with Clark. While I still have issues with this version of Livewire, she's really grown on me, and season 2 has really cemented her as an interesting take on the Electric Lady. Love isn't for cowards indeed.
Oh, that's easy, Superman. We're the good guys.
If Livewire's portrayal grew on me, Agent Slade Wilson did the opposite. Like in season 1, he was one of the most notable villains both in design and character, but I've always felt he was out of place in this rogues gallery. I like him well enough, but I feel like he's only here for his name recognition, and that they could have picked a multitude of more Superman-specific villains to fill his role as Task Force X's snarky main muscle. Design-wise, he beats out most of the cast. His Black Ops Dante look is eye-catching, and while his armor is drastically different from his comics counterpart, it's still intimidating and interesting than most villains' armor designs, even if he does look like somebody's edgelord Evangelion mecha OC. I will admit it's very weird to hear the voice actor for Jerry Smith voicing this pretty boy version of DC's greatest assassin, but I had too much fun splicing Rick and Morty audio with clips of him, I'm not gonna lie.
See that? I'm peeing all over your special guns. That means I own them.
But while he starts strong and proves to actually have some weight to his fights, come season 2, Slade feels like he's in decline, and honestly no better than Damage and Atomic Skull as far as being regulated to, we need someone for a flashy fight scene, or having much else to do beyond that. There's some interesting dynamics with him fighting Lex for Wallace approval like squabbling brothers, but there isn't much else to it, especially since the epilogue implies they buried the hatchet off screen and mutually jumped ship when Task Force X got axed, with the implication of him becoming this Lex's version of Mercy Graves, which is kind of amusing in itself. He ranks high for avoiding the boring character design problem that plagued most of this list, having personality, and providing engaging fight scenes, but much like his status as Waller's right-hand man, his presence as a credible threat and villain is falling bit by bit, and only time will tell if he fully cements himself as a disposable henchman come season 3. Regardless, he at least falls in style.
Knowledge is power, and power is security. But what security do we have against a Superman?
I debated heavily about putting Lex this high on the list, mostly because I was left wondering if I was making him top 5 because of the pedigree tied to his name and his potential over what this version actually does in Season 2. I mentioned this before in my Adventures Lex vs. Snyder Lex video, but I feel like this version captures a lot of the core elements of a Luthor. The massive but fragile ego, the seething xenophobic hatred of Superman, and so on. But I feel like he doesn't do enough to really live up to the title of Superman's greatest foe. Though I blame most of this on both the fact they couldn't use him in Season 1 due to some strange mandate from DC that the creators had to fight, and come Season 2 he gets completely eclipsed by the Brainiac and Kara storyline. Like, really, think about the fact that Lex and Superman have shared one scene together in the entire second season, and it's more of him addressing the crowd with his anti-alien bullcrap than actually talking to his supposed archenemy. Lex has more villainous chemistry with Jimmy, who accidentally encouraged him towards his mad scientist status. However, I do feel like there's quality over quantity going on with Lex's characterization. What they do get right with this version of the character really hits home with the story's modern writing. Lex's smarmy tech bro background under a Mxyzptlk, his vicious, hateful, anti-alien rhetoric that he can barely hide behind a thin veneer of charm and reasonable public discourse that feels scarily on point with modern hate group and hate click content creation tactics. The engorged false bravado hiding a callous, self-serving, and incredibly insecure piece of shit human being. Adventures Lex is a masterclass in modernizing aspects of a character while keeping those same elements there for all to see. It just sucks that he didn't have enough time to cook in Season 2. At the very least, from what we've gleaned about Season 3, Lex will finally be coming into his own as he hits his Elon Musk arc, or at the very least we'll have more things to mold over. Bald Lex is coming, just stay patient. Regardless, what little we get of this angry little hate goblin, it's enough to propel him to the high tier of Adventure Superman's foes.
I have seen countless yous, and it is your fate to always be different, and weird, and alone.
Back during Season 1 with the constantly uninspired super tech crook villains, Mxyzptlk was an oasis in the desert. His stylish and very Dragon Ball inspired design, the fact that he was the first magic-based character in the show, and of course, his humorous fourth wall breaking jokes left a lasting impression on me. While some might be a bit sick of the multiverse concept in superhero media, me being an old-ass superhero comic book nerd who eats this stuff for breakfast, all I can say is, cope? I joke, but regardless, it makes sense given Mxyzptlk's status as a trickster god from another dimension. He's funny, quirky, and provides a lot of humor, but not without deflating his menace nor his threat. Even when he's joking around, you can tell this guy isn't someone you want to threaten. I especially like the theory that this is legitimately the same Mxyzptlk from the old DCAU continuity, but with a new look, but I doubt they'll ever confirm or deny that. I guess he went through a weeb arc after the DCAU universe ended. While his battle at his full power was quite fun and flashy, I was hoping for a more visual feast of chaos given what utterly insane things the old DCAU or comics versions can do. While I was sad he didn't appear in Season 2, I also understand. Mxyzptlk works best as a one-shot episode antagonist, and Season 2 was a very serialized season that didn't have time for a lot of one-off stories. But hopefully we'll see this mad trickster god again come Season 3. Oh god, now I'm wondering what Mxyzptlk's taste in waifus is. We better get moving.
I say, what is a hot dog?
Okay, hear me out on this one. It might seem weird that I both added Supergirl to this list, and that she ended up ranking so high, but I feel like that both speaks to how well she worked as a villain, however brief, and the above-mentioned issues with the overall villain writing for the show being lackluster. Kara makes for a great anti-villain and a reformed antagonist. While her worst actions can be chalked up to Brainiac's brainwashing, not everything can be blamed on this. The brainwashing only comes into play when she strays from Brainiac's mindset. Kara at the beginning is very much the product of being raised by a soulless, warmongering machine who instills his toxic version of Kryptonian culture on her. She's a dogmatic, violent, warrior-centered character at the start of the season who refuses to believe in any other way than the Kryptonian warrior way. But behind that militant daddy's girl is a person with a big heart and curiosity for everything around her that's unfortunately buried under a crushing need to live up to Brainiac's ruthless standards and what she thinks is a good citizen of the Empire. Her gradual redemption and overcoming Brainiac's control is one of the highlights of Season 2, but I do feel like the story greatly rushes past the fact this version of Supergirl has a body count. Oh, for the love of— no, not that kind of body count. Seriously, they don't give the numbers, and yeah, it was technically Brainiac forcing her to via the brainwashing, but we can't gloss over the fact that Supergirl basically glassed 3 to 5 planets worth of people. I get they couldn't focus a lot on it as they had 10 episodes and not enough time to let that breathe, but holy shit. Hopefully Season 3 at least addresses this aspect over just hand-waving it like General Lane's slaughter of the Cadmus Labs, because I feel like this is a pretty big part of her characterization that at least deserves an episode to explore. Maybe not an entire season of melodrama like the Young Justice Beast Boys downward spiral or anything, but something. Regardless, while her tenure as a villain was brief, I'm excited to see her adventures alongside her budding romance with Jimmy Rizzler Flamebird. She had a fantastic run and was a great example of doing a sympathetic antagonist right. Now go give this poor ex-war criminal a hug.
I built this company myself, and I deserve more.
Parasite was always one of Superman's more notable but not big-name villains alongside Metallo and Livewire, so color me surprised that he ended up being one of the standout villains of Season 1. Like many of the villains, Parasite had a drastic redesign from most usual incarnations of the character, though this specific redesign was more of putting 2 different characters into a blender, with some seasoning from a specific third one. It was an interesting idea to fuse Parasite with Dr. Ivo into one character, but looking at everything about Season 1, it really does feel like they were just setting him up to be their Lex Luthor in the event they couldn't revoke the no Lex mandate they started with. I mean, it's all there. The smarmy but insecure tech bro background, the psychotic and unhinged obsession with blaming Superman for all his woes, and his crazed need to defeat him at all costs. This is all very Luthor. Even with the implications of whether or not Adventurous Parasite was intended to be we have Lex Luthor at home, he still stands on his own as a popular and notable antagonist. The sleek Evangelion-like Parasite armor, his fight scenes, his slow descent into madness, his climactic final battle as a kaiju, he very much stole the show in Season 1. He stands as a perfect foil for Superman during this early season, particularly during the what's your angle conversation between the two. Ivo is a selfish, loathsome person who hides it all behind a fragile veneer of charm and smart marketing like his former understudy Lex, and truly can't fathom somebody with Superman's powers would help someone just because it's the right thing to do. A fact that he murderously refuses to believe that further drives his need to crush the young Man of Steel, another Luthor quality. While it makes sense he was left in the background of Season 2 as he was basically a stepping stone for the proper Lex Luthor, I do hope he gets a comeback in Season 3, with him being one of the more iconic villains of the series, but not quite the best of the best. There's only one villain who can claim that crown.
I was built for war, but now I was just supposed to let them decommission me? No.
Let's be real, I would have had to have been smoking some seriously wild stuff if I said anyone on this list was better than Brainiac in My Adventures with Superman. I'm gonna be honest, I've never been the biggest Brainiac fan. I always found him to be an overdone and kind of bland alien AI invader. He fills his role as a massive threat that may justify hero team-ups, but he was never on any top villain lists for me personally. Adventures Brainiac completely changed my view of the character. I love everything about him. His menacing design, his expressive voice, the way he just oozes manipulation and cold, calculating gaslighting when interacting with Kara and Clark. This guy made me get up and go, finally a compelling villain. I think what I love most about this version of Brainiac is the personality and the frightening themes behind him. This isn't an emotionless machine just wandering the universe with a twisted quest for knowledge. This is a crazed warrior program with sentience that considers itself the best aspects of Krypton. He's a warmongering tyrant that embodies all of the problematic, violent colonization aspects of Krypton, but none of its more peaceful and scientific achievements. He's a creature built for conquest and battle, and it's not that he doesn't understand alternative ideas like peace and communication. He's well aware of them. It's just that he despises these concepts with the heat of 1,000 suns. His entire speech during the finale revealing that he was the one who destroyed Krypton simply out of spite gave me legitimate chills.
Oh, how they moaned that we weren't winning the war, that their children were dying. Do you know, Kal-El, that your father led secret peace talks with our enemies? They were going to declare a ceasefire, and then where would that leave me?
The sheer disgust in his voice due to them seeking a ceasefire with their enemies. The fear in Brainiac's voice about being decommissioned and possibly removed as his role as a warrior, and the fact that it sent him into a psychopathic rage. His unhinged gloating as he sicks Karen Clark. This isn't a rogue robot. This is a depraved blood knight with a god complex. And while it's not fully explored, his twisted relationship with his daughter, Kara, really highlights his manipulation skills. He gives off a lot of abusive youth pastor vibes, constantly berating and gaslighting Kara for straying from the true path. And while I feel on some level his feelings for Kara as a daughter aren't 100% an act, it's very clear by the finale he's thrown them away in pursuit of his twisted need for conquest and domination. Brainiac steals the show and runs with it, and finally sets the bar for all future villains in the franchise. While he's definitely out for the count, I do have a feeling we haven't seen the last of the mad cyber tyrant if the show continues past season 3. But regardless of where the next season goes, Lex, maybe Metallo, and all the other new foes have some massive shoes to fill if they want to stand alongside Brainiac as one of the show's greatest villains. And that's the list. While I was a little harsh on the overall villain writing, I do want to make it clear I still love My Adventures with Superman. While the villains are a tad weak, this show is still the gold standard for Superman, DC, and superhero shows period. And I hope it continues to get renewed for more seasons, and even possibly kickstart a new DC animated universe. With a recently announced spin-off called My Adventures with the Green Lantern, maybe that wish is about to come true. Just please, for the love of God, contract Edna Mode and get her to fix these fashion disasters we're calling villain costumes. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. This one was a massive labor of love to get made, so if you liked it, I'd appreciate a like and a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this show and its villains, and whether you'd rank them. Super excited for season 3, and I hope you all are too. Be sure to subscribe for more superhero, anime, and comics yapping from me. Thanks again, I'll catch you all later.